Okay, welcome to the next e-course video for Descartes, Rationalism, and some of the British empiricists. Two British empiricist thinkers, John Locke and David Hume. This video will mostly cover Descartes, with some thoughts left at the end for our empiricist friends. First, the question is, what is the self? What is the person? And we seem to use self, person, mind. We seem to use a lot of these ideas interchangeably. So we want to get clear first on what it is that the self is and the question that this unit is asking. So the question is, what is the self? I am a self, you watching this are a self. And so when we start to ask this philosophical question, there are different competing answers for the same thing. So our first philosopher under discussion, and almost every introduction to philosophy class always starts what is called the modern period in philosophy with Descartes. Descartes was born 1596, dies 1650, I believe. And so in his life, so Shakespeare is writing The Merchant of Venice in 1596. Galileo and Hobbes are his contemporaries. And so he's born in this very rich period during the 1600s, the arrival of the modern state actor in international relations. As you may or may not know, the state as we know it, there's a bunch of sovereign states in the international system. Seems to come to its philosophical birth. We move from mercantilism into a form of market-based, almost capitalistic series of economics that starts in the 1600s. In the 1600s, we also have the 30 Years' War between Protestants and Catholics that divides up Europe. So it's a very interesting time. Certainly for philosophy to be going on. Descartes has some, I guess I would say, Plato in him. He believes that if you apprehend mathematics, and mathematical training will be able to produce in you the ability to do philosophical thought. So the answer to what the self is, or what the person is, occurs in the Meditations on First Philosophy. And so we're going to at least talk about Meditation 1, Meditation 2. That's what I'm going to transition to now. So Meditation 1, Descartes starts doubting the sources of knowledge. So there's two sources of knowledge up for grabs between both the empiricists and the rationalists. Now the rationalists over here think that concepts and ideas are accessible by reason. We can use reason to arrive at truth. The empiricists, which you may recognize the adjective empirical if you're a science student, right? Empiricism is the idea that the senses are the primary mode of access to forming ideas. So empiricism, very simple, right? How do I have the idea of fish and chips? I have gone to a bar and I've ordered fish and chips. And then I take that sensory impression of what fish and chips are, and then I get the idea, right? And the more times I've done this, my ideas of fish and chips might be, refined. So maybe I went to like this little dinky bar in Western Pennsylvania, then all of a sudden I went to England and I understand what fish and chips are, right? I have a better refined idea, but I have experienced the idea of fish and chips, right? Now, the senses are a mode of knowledge. This is everywhere. And not only is this everywhere for us, right? Because you and I are persons who, well, actually, you might actually be born in the 21st century. I was born in the later 20th century. But we've always had conveniences of modern scientific innovation around us, right? So we've always had microwaves, which excite water molecules. Like, that's my version of science. we've always had telescopes. We've been looking at the stars. We've been looking at stellar nurseries, light years upon light years away, right? We occupy a different world than the 1600s. 1600s doesn't have any of this. And more importantly, that means that we have to use our imaginations and think. When we read Descartes, we must inhabit his text, right? The dialogical encounter with the Meditations on First Philosophy. Well, meditation 1. Doubt the senses. I mean, the senses can deceive you, right? Even now on this video, the camera apparatus will make it look like I have superpowers of super speed. I can blur my skin. Right, I'm like, I'm the Flash. No, I'm Barry Allen. I'm the fastest man alive. Have you ever done the marker illusion where you make it bend? It looks like it's bending even in the camera, yet it's straight. It's plastic, right? Plastic is a petrochemical product, right? And it's sturdy. It didn't actually bend. Think about a hot summer Georgia day. You're on interstate, right? So you're on 95, and there's a long stretch of flat highway, and in the distance, you ever see what looks like a lake on the interstate, and it starts to reflect a little bit? Have you ever seen a hot car in a hot Georgia sun, and you look right at the edge of a black car, and you actually see the air being heated around it because it's so hot? Who has a charcoal black car in Georgia, right? There's different ways that our senses do deceive us. In my face-to-face class, I show several illusions that are actually engineered by cognitive scientists to trick our minds, right? So there's the spinning dot illusion that gives the illusory presence of a green dot, even though it's actually disappearing and fading to gray. The dancing silhouette. Or maybe I'll actually put these in the thread that I dropped this video in. When the shadow dancer looks like she moves right, then she starts looking left, then she moves again. But basically what these illusions are is they're engineered to trick our minds. They're meant to deceive us because they know how the minds work. So they made these illusions, and our brain actually fills in. You can remember this. You were in grade school, maybe. The dress, remember the dress on Twitter, right? Was it blue or black or gold and white? And everyone's senses filled in the missing information, but they saw it differently. And this blew up social media, and it blew up social media, quite frankly, because our senses are somewhat reliable, but also capable of deceiving us. So Descartes asked the really hard question, can our senses give us certainty? In much the same way that mathematical certainty gives us. And the answer is no, according to Descartes. So that's a central, so the systematic doubt that he starts to engage in, he starts to doubt a lot of things. But the main thing I want you to pay attention to is the role of doubting the senses and how that figures into Descartes' solution to the unreliability of the senses. The solution is to go to reason. And we call this rationalism. Rationalism is the thesis that some ideas, not all ideas, there's a sum here, right? Sum as a logical quantifier means at least one. But some ideas are accessible by reason alone. Now that access, where those ideas came from, that's a larger question. The proposal here will be that there will be innate ideas put into us by God, right? As a reason why we have them. But you don't get those that comes out in later meditations. But that's the short answer, kind of like asking someone, telling the end of the movie Titanic before they actually even know about the Titanic. I'm sorry about that. All right, so let's actually engage in what is called a thought experiment. All right, a thought experiment is an imaginative scenario, and Descartes engages in a thought experiment, you could kind of read that into meditation 1, where we close our eyes. So what I want you to do right now is close your eyes. All right. So close your eyes and imagine you in the room right now, right? And start taking away objects in the room. So first, start with the furniture, right? I'm going to take away the bookshelves behind me, my desk table. All right, they're gone. And what you're doing when you're taking them away with your imagination is you're doubting their existence, right? I doubt that they are real, okay? Because the senses are delivering to us, right? So let's close our eyes again. So, all right, so I doubt the furniture is real. Okay, so I'm not too sure about the furniture, so I take that out of the room. Okay, take out all the little objects that were on the furniture too. Okay, take out the light sources and either the background noises, so like my air conditioning on, doubt everything's existence. Even doubt my body, like doubt that you have a body just like your furniture. Doubt everything's existence, right? That's delivered through the senses. Do you get to a point where you can't doubt anymore? I'm going to pause here, right? I'm not really pausing. If you answered, I can't doubt the fact that I am actually doubting, that is called the cogito, the I think, right? It's the Latin root of cognition, right? And this moment, I can't doubt the fact that I am doubting, is the first proof, Descartes thinks, of an innate idea. I have an innate idea of my own self. So the answer to the unit question, what is a self? Well, what is a self is that I am a thinking thing. I can't doubt the fact that I am doubting, right? So there's this idea is kind of there's a metaphor called the theater of the mind, right? So you have a stage, right? I'm going to draw this. You have it. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of all the paper so it doesn't bleed through. I'm using black marker. See, there's a stage, right? And the whole theater is a mind, right? And you have all these different thoughts on stage, right? So here's the stage. It's called the theater of the mind, right? Your mind is actually the whole theater. Now, you're passing thoughts of consciousness, right? So last night I had great pretzel with chocolate icing, and my memory is like chocolate pretzel icing, right? So I've had that going on. I'm like, oh man, that's fabulous pretzel. And I have all this, all these sensations of pretzel, right? Yummy pretzel, yummy, yummy, right? My anticipation of having wings later tonight, right? Memories, but also what I'm seeing, right? Making sure the technology is working, right? I'm aware of myself as on camera. So at the present moment, there's always some sort of sensation, some sort of experience you're undergoing in the present, right? And when Descartes says, I doubt the fact that I am doubting, he is having an experience of a spectator in terms of his own thoughts. This analogy, this metaphor is the theater of the mind, right? In fact, this is knowledge by introspection, right? So there's this word. Introspection, right? Introspection, learn your Latin. Intro, inside, spectare, to watch. So introspection is literally to watch within oneself, the unfolding of what is, so spectare is also the root of specter, who goes, and being a spectator, right? One who watches. So knowledge by introspection. And I don't need the senses for this type of knowledge. That's the important thing. I know that I exist as a thinking thing, and that is not something delivered by the senses. In fact, in order to reach that knowledge, I needed to doubt the senses and everything around me. Meditation 1 leading to meditation 2. So, the first metaphysical truth reached by reason alone is that I am a thinking thing. I am, and this, this sets up an entire metaphysical system. And what does it do? Well, I start to become aware that thinking things involve non-physical things, right? So the non-physical gets associated with the mental, right? And as opposed to physical things. All right, so in Descartes, you get non-physical associated with the mental, or the spirit, the physical things, or the matter. Material things are down here, and the non-physical things are up here. Reality is composed of two substances, the physical and the mental. And there's more technical terms inside Descartes for these, right? So what are they? So he says, here's a Latin word for you. Res cogitans. That's the thinking stuff. And up here, these are the truths of God and of theology. Now, the study of physical things, you might know as the natural sciences, right? And he calls this res extensa, right? Or physical things. Extension, right? Things that have mass. Remember, you were taught that matter takes up space. Well, that's a very old 17th century definition of what it means to be an extended substance. So Descartes' system concludes with certainty that there is a division between this and this, right? And this is what gets known as, this whole view, right, will be known as dualism. That reality is composed of two substances, a mental thinking substance and a physical substance. Now the question here as a human self, right, and sometimes Cartesian dualism is called, sometimes it's called dualistic interactionism. So sometimes it's called that. These are just very fanciful philosophical terms, right? Now, all right, so we've done a little bit of that, and we've sort of talked about, what it might mean to systematically deny the senses, the role of doubt played in sensory knowledge, and then why someone would become a rationalist, right? So, at the end of the day, why would someone want to adopt a metaphysical view where there's non-physical mental stuff and physical stuff, and the universe is composed of these two things? What does that mean for the self, right? So, I don't know. Any of you watch Sam and Dean? I mean, this is everywhere in Sam and Dean. If you watch, what's that called? Damn it. Why is the Sam and Dean CW show escaping me? Supernatural Hunters. Supernatural. It's called Supernatural, right? That when there are ghosts in the world, right? Why are there ghosts in the world? Well, this is Descartes' idea of dualism, right? That the human being, I don't know. I'm going to draw one of those restroom stick figures for a person, right? So this is a person, right? It's female, I guess. All right, whatever. All right, it doesn't matter the gender, or but the person. Now, the person is not just a physical body, at least in the dualistic view. The dualistic view is that the human being is half physical, and I don't know how to draw a soul because it's non-physical. It doesn't take up space, right? For something to be non-physical, now it's important to note here is it doesn't take up space, but somehow it experiences time. Don't ask me how, but this is the view that Descartes is giving us in Meditations on First Philosophy. So I guess I'll draw like a little line through, and then I'll just like draw like a little ghosty kind of vapor thing, like and a little face, right? But we're half. We're half. We're a soul inside a body, right? And this lends a sort of view that the dualistic interactionism, right? How is it that the physical and non-physical interact? That's the hard question. The hard question is, what does it mean to experience pain, right? Is it the physical body just experiencing pain? Descartes did these experiments on animals, by putting nails inside dogs. Yeah, there wasn't PETA back then. Were animals not ensouled creatures that, they just were physical automatons, right? So you get, the view that Descartes is proffering has to answer a lot. Actually, this is kind of fun. So let's briefly talk about the empiricists. The more fun view, actually, maybe a view on Locke and Hume as they differ would be good. For now, I just wanted to sort of talk to you a little bit about Descartes. Why it is the case that someone might be a dualist. Well, it allows us to ground and articulate a worldview where our religious aspirations can be accommodated as well as the scientific. Because when you take a look at this picture, this line is a sharp divide, right? Between the physical and the non-physical. It is that the science of physical things will never interact with the spiritual world. They come together in the human being, and that's what makes human beings so special in this view. And also, in Introduction to Philosophy, all my Christian students light up, oh my God, now I have a way to explain all the stuff I may have wondered about. And Descartes does give us an explanatory worldview that can help us articulate the deeper questions about what a human being is. Well, a human being is a soul inside a body, an embodied soul, right? That interacts with the physical. Now, you're going to read some stuff in this unit, I think, about the pineal gland. He suggests that, the site of interaction, was it the pituitary gland or the pineal gland? I don't remember, right? But let me look it up. But he does suggest some things. But I mean, it's just speculation, right? And he's also doing a conception of philosophy that is securing the scientific truths away from having ever be interfered with from the science, right? So there would be no question, the truth of science, maybe evolution could just be, but we're somehow special in terms of the whole process, right? Evolution is just describing that here. I mean, the extrapolations of this become interestingly problematic. I mean, the dualistic view has to answer for a lot of things. How interaction, our models of cognitive science are based on neural networks, network computing, sometimes thinking of the mind as an organic computer. There's different ways to think about the self in philosophy of mind, but this is one of them. And it comes to us in the mid-1600s. And it's not to say that people haven't been dualists before, but I think for whatever reason, everyone just attached to Descartes, and his view seemed to become ever popular and legitimate current worldviews. Interestingly enough, however, this was still found to be controversial to the Catholic Church, and Descartes is a Catholic philosopher, right? So he actually had to flee to Holland to articulate his dualistic system. There's many reasons why his philosophy inside the Meditations on First Philosophy contradicts the Catholic Church. He puts an end to something called final causes. He also, the church had a hierarchy, right? An extensive cosmological hierarchy with God at the top, angels, the planets. In the middle of creation between spirit and matter were human beings. So you could see the dualism even in the Catholic Church, right? And then things participated in spirit and matter all the way up to God, and then the most material things down here being like rocks. So, and that's called the great chain of being, right? And that was the view that many Catholic priests were being trained with. And you have to remember, in the Middle Ages, there is no other institution inside Europe apart from the Catholic Church who is somehow preserving knowledge, right? So there's 5 or 6 centuries of no real cultural development. There's only a recovery from systematic plague, systematic war, right? And so Descartes also did some annoying things. And I don't know if you really want to know this, but you called it the Cartesian coordinate system. So you might have remembered in geometry or analytic or algebraic geometry, right, where you have an x and y axis and you had points, right? This is all Descartes. This is called the Cartesian coordinate system. And you had things like y equals mx plus b. You're like, when am I ever going to use that? And the accounting major's like, we use that all the time. All right, enough about that. So René Descartes thinks that the truths of the soul's existence come out of systematic doubt of the meditation. I mean, of systematic doubt of sensory knowledge, right? He also, in Meditation 3 and 5, offers 2 separate proofs for God's existence. And in Meditation 6, he brings it together to form a dualistic system. You do get the matter back. His proofs for God's existence are interesting and are the backbone of any unit of philosophy of religion that usually gets taught. So you can actually see that the Meditations of First Philosophy is a completely beautiful book, carved up for however it is. Meditation 1 is on systematic doubt of sensory knowledge. And then what's the alternative? Well, some ideas we have innate access to, right? And this opens up a sort of opposition between 2 sources of knowledge. I guess this is the good thing to end on, right? So Descartes is called a rationalist, right? Remember, a rationalist is someone who thinks that some ideas are innate. And then there are empiricists who think that our ideas come from sensory knowledge, right? So the rationalists and empiricists, right? So some ideas are described as a priori, right? A priori basically means knowledge attained independently of the senses, right? So you can arrive at 2 + 2 = 4 under the concepts of mathematical objects alone. You don't actually need to see 2 things and 2 things together to equal 4, right? You can just do it with pure ideas, or at least that's the philosophical claim. Now, empiricists are people who say, no. Our ideas are not justified a priori, they're justified a posteriori, right? Which means knowledge derived from the senses. So my knowledge as to, think about this, right? George's sun, I'm 7 miles from the beach. I burn, when I go out to the beach, I burn the back of my neck really badly. Right? For whatever reason, it's just, but I know this by experience. Like, for whatever reason, the sun just hits here. I always forget to put it there, put sunblock there and behind the ears. Those are the places I burn. So I wear a hat now. Right? Why do I wear a hat? Well, because the hat sort of mitigates some effect of the intense sun when I'm out, because I know that I burn easily in the sun, right? My Pennsylvania, Northeast Ohio-ness can't deal with this type of sun down here, right? That you get in the American Southeast. So rationalism, and you can see so basically the philosophical tension of that. What is a self? Is a self experienced? Is a self known by ideas alone? So where is the self? Is it here or here? We'll get some more interesting answers on Locke and Hume, who are down here, right? Okay. So I'm just going to drop this video in the Descartes discussion block. Okay. So hopefully I've illuminated some of the ideas that you're encountering, and stay tuned. Okay, keep showing up, keep logging in, keep reading. I'll see you.